क्या चाहते हम क्या चाहते ए मौला दे दे कुरान के सदके हम लेके रहेंगे भारत से लेंगे ए यारो सुन लो ए प्यारो सुन लो आजादी लेना.
What does the chorus of chants for freedom in the Valley of Kashmir have to do with the failure during sea trials of two state-of-the-art stealth destroyers of the US Navy called the USS Zumwalt and the USS Michael Monsoor? What does the contest for singular global dominance between the US and China in the field of microprocessors, so vital for today's digital world, have to do with the waters of the Indus River that runs through Ladakh? What do the waters of the Indus, Jhelum and Chenab rivers respectively have to do with the Wahhabization of Jammu and Kashmir since 1989 and the institutionalization of Pakistan-sponsored terrorism?
When I went, I talked to the boys. In their mind, the valley should be independent Republic of Islam. They didn't want to anything else. I said, how would you get it? He said, through these bullets. I said, the state has more bullets than you have. They said, maybe it will go on.
We were given directions. I was there very much in South Kashmir at that time, and we received directions from the army headquarters. It will not be called militancy, because militancy has different connotations. It is terror.
Indus, Jhelum, Chenab, the northern river systems, if you lose territorial control of that, you lose a lot of potential water and energy. The fight over Siachen and the Siachen Glacier is about water.
The most important, as I told you, the US Senate has also predicted the future war may not be over Kashmir, but it could be over water.
Legends reveal that the Kashmir Valley, exquisite, legendary and now contentious, was once submerged underwater. Ancient texts have referred to the existence of mountainous land known by several names through history. Kashyapamir, Kashyapameru, Kashyapapur, Casperia, Caspapiros.
Kashmir's famous epic Raj Tarangini, written in 1148 AD by Kalhana, reveals that Ashoka brought Buddhism to Kashmir in the mid-3rd century BC, where it took root and spread to Tibet, China and Central Asia.
It was only during the reign of the Sultan dynasty from 1339 that Islam overpowered Hinduism and Buddhism in the region. Sikandar Butchikan, the iconoclastic 6th Sultan of the Shahamiri dynasty, who ruled from 1389 to 1413, had attempted to sanitize the valley of all of its non-Muslim inhabitants and their culture. This was the period when Kashmir's patron saint, Nand Rishi, realizing that there was no other option, converted to Islam and came to be called Sheikh Nuruddin Wali, or the Light of the Faith. In 1586, the Mughals annexed the state from the Sultan dynasty and ruled it as part of their empire for 166 years. The minority Hindu community of Kashmiri Pandits or Brahmins were highly educated in the Persian language, and this knowledge helped them serve the state's Muslim rulers for centuries and emerge as the cornerstone of the ruling dynasties. The Muslims in the state were mainly artisans and peasants. There was a clear trade-off. The Pandits accepted the dominant Islamic culture, but they controlled the state's economy by virtue of their superior education and mobility. The entire state of Jammu and Kashmir, as it stood in 1947 on the eve of partition, was a constituent part of Maharaja Ranjit Singh's Kingdom of Punjab till as late as 1846. When Maharaja Ranjit Singh conquered the state in 1819, he recognized the talents of one of his soldiers called Gulab Singh, a Dogra from Jammu. The Maharaja installed him as the ruler of Jammu in 1822 and personally anointed him as his vassal ruler. The death of Maharaja Ranjit Singh in 1839 plunged the Sikh Empire into instability. After a bitter battle, the British defeated the Sikh forces at the end of February 1846. The British, with the help of Gulab Singh, rapidly executed the Treaty of Lahore in March 1846. This treaty compelled Maharaja Duleep Singh, the vanquished infant ruler of Punjab, to allow Gulab Singh to enter into a separate treaty with the British. Exactly a week later, on 16th March 1846, the British signed a second treaty called the Treaty of Amritsar with Raja Gulab Singh, which allowed them to slice off the valley of Kashmir and all territories of the conquered Sikh Empire, east of the river Indus and west of the river Ravi, and sell it to Gulab Singh for 75 lakh rupees in Nanak Shahi currency, the currency of the Sikh Empire. The Treaty of Amritsar gave the British paramountcy in matters of defense, foreign affairs and communication over Jammu and Kashmir. In February 1856, because of his failing health, Maharaja Gulab Singh abdicated his throne in favor of his third and youngest son, Ranbir Singh, with the permission of the British. Upon Maharaja Ranbir Singh's death in September 1885, his eldest son, Pratap Singh, became the new Maharaja. In February 1889, the British resident, Colonel Parry Nisbet, stripped Pratap Singh of his authority as the sovereign ruler for carrying out treasonable correspondence with enemies of the British Empire. This action of the government of India in superseding the rule of the Maharaja and dispossessing him of his sovereignty, even though his grandfather Maharaja Gulab Singh had signed the Treaty of Amritsar way back in 1846, was unthinkable even in those times. In post-independent India, this action became the basis of the right to invoke President's rule in any Indian state. Since 1947, President's rule has been invoked several times in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Pratap Singh died in 1925, a frustrated and embittered man who had spent 36 of the 40 years of his rule as a ring-fenced, downsized Maharaja, far removed from the glory of his grandfather, Maharaja Gulab Singh. In the new Republic of India in the 20th and 21st centuries, respectively, the enemy in question is Pakistan by itself first, and then later as a proxy for China. The political flirtation of successive valley politicians with separatists propped up by Pakistan has, time and again, resulted in the suspension of the democratic political process in Kashmir and in the introduction of governor's rule. Today, the threat to the Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir is China, both directly and via its proxy Pakistan. Indian forces have been engaged in confrontational military policies with the Chinese in the eastern parts of the state for almost 2 centuries now.
Unfortunately for us, in 1947, the government of India of that day just did not have that resolve in dealing with this issue of Kashmir. I would like to take you back to the 24th of October 1947, when Maharaja Hari Singh faced an existential crisis. At that point of time, on his western border, on that very day of October 24th, there was a collection of non-state actors led by a gentleman called Sardar Ibrahim Khan. And these actors attacked the western border of the state, and the Maharaja's meager defenses crumbled, and they entered a village called Palandri in the Siddhanodi district of Poonch, and they declared the state of Azad Kashmir. They had a few well-known journalists with them, and they got the news out on Reuters, and it spread around the world that the state of Azad Kashmir has been formed. And at the same time, on that very day, on the northern borders, there was a Pakistani colonel called Akbar Khan, and he adopted the nom de guerre of General Tariq, and he led his invasion force of tribal levies, khasadars, and again non-state actors on the road to Srinagar. Now the Maharaja was in a very difficult situation because in the month of August of 1947, he had to sack his Prime Minister Ramchandra Kak, who was trying to nudge the state towards merger with Pakistan. And in September, he had to sack his army chief, who was Major General Scott, because the army chief betrayed him. And in October, he had to sack his police chief, Inspector General Richard Powell, because he was in league with the Pakistanis. So now he had to replace these people with unqualified and inexperienced individuals who just didn't have the wherewithal or the ability to understand the geostrategic implications of an invasion of his state with the help of the British deep state and the Pakistan government. Now I'd like to take you back to the Indian Independence Act in July of that year that gave birth to India and Pakistan, the two dominions. Now, under the terms of this Indian Independence Act, the rulers of the princely states in India, there were 562 of them, they were empowered to exercise their sovereignty to choose between either India or Pakistan or remain independent. Now, these rulers did not have to resort to the endorsement of popular will. There was no concept of popular will because they were ruling feudal states. There was no election commission. There were no ballot boxes. There was nothing. So the Maharajas were endowed with the sovereignty to take their decision. Now, what did Maharaja Hari Singh do? He wanted to see if he could hold out and be independent as long as is possible. And he entered into a standstill agreement with the government of Pakistan. He also offered the same agreement to the government of India. But the government of India, in all its wisdom, turned it down. Now, if the government of India had signed the standstill agreement, then we could have moved our army into Kashmir at the first instance of the raiders coming in. But we didn't do that. So the Maharaja, was in this very big quandary, and he then decided to sign the instrument of accession and accede to India. Now, when he signed this instrument of accession, Lord Mountbatten, who was the Governor General, qualified this accession by saying you have to resort to a plebiscite. So he did that. He gave this poison chalice to the Maharaja and to the people of India that there will be a plebiscite when there was no provision under the Indian Independence Act. Now, once the Indian army came in, what did Prime Minister Nehru do? He said that, look, you only drive the raiders out of those parts of the state where the Kashmiri language is spoken. Now, this state was a heterogeneous state. It had 5 different parts: that Gilgit, Baltistan area, there was Ladakh, there was the valley, there's Jammu, and there's Muzaffarabad, the Poonch belt. Now, if we were only going to throw out the raiders from the valley, from the Kashmiri-speaking areas, what about the rest of the state? So you are creating the basis of a dispute by telling the world that the rest of the state doesn't belong to us. Only the valley belongs to us, so we're only going to get the valley. So this is an extraordinary situation. And the people of India were kept in the dark. That, the government has told the army that have this unilateral ceasefire, we're going to the United Nations. So that's the first thing, that this was a criminal trespass and should have been treated as that, and the guy should have been thrown out. But they were indulged with, and they were allowed to settle down and take roots. Now the world has known for the last 72 years that this is a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. But it's hardly a bilateral issue. Between 1947 and 1956, for the 9 years that Pakistan was a British dominion, the British state was complicit in the non-resolution of this issue because the government of India was so coy and so timid that it wasn't willing to recognize that this relationship was a ménage à trois. There were 3 parties in it. And without the consent of the British, nothing would happen. In 1956, when Pakistan became an Islamic republic, the British were replaced by the Chinese, and today you are living in a fool's paradise if you think that this Kashmir issue can be solved between India and Pakistan. It cannot be solved without China. That is a given. The Chinese will never let it happen. And finally, Mr. Imran Khan these days has been shedding crocodile tears about the people in the valley.
India must lift this inhuman curfew.
But the Pakistanis have never been interested in the people in the valley. The valley has been a means to an end. The end has been the waters of the Indus in Ladakh, which irrigate 70% of Pakistan. And in 1963, in February, in the rounds of talks between India and Pakistan on the resolution of the Kashmir conflict brokered by the Americans, Bhutto said that we cannot resolve this issue unless Ladakh is given to us. Now, he was introducing a new theory. On the basis of the two-nation theory, Pakistan had been formed in 1947. Now he was creating a 3-nation theory where Pakistan was no longer going to be the homeland of the Muslims of the subcontinent, but the Buddhists as well, because Ladakh was 95% Buddhist in 1963. Now this fact and this articulation by Bhutto was also suppressed by the government of India, and they never used it to either inform the public that, look, this is what the fight is all about.
I was just asking General Athar Snan, who has worked in Kashmir, whether and to what extent our national intelligence agencies have been aware in terms of the realities which have been influencing the course of Indian history. What was happening in certain international capitals, who were the players, who were planning what, to do what in India, the division of the country, the line, the partition was done, the line drawn, what exactly was planned in terms of J&K, the talk of the Maharaja Hari Singh and his time, and the manner in which he handed over the authority of the state, how his own Prime Minister and his lady wife were part of the great game, if I may use the word. If I am a commander in Kashmir and I don't know what the influences were at work in the past, in the current present, what kind of military planning do I do, and in what manner do I carry out the behest of the sovereign authority?
Bravo B2 search. Operator B1 clear.
7.5 गाड़ी गई क्या हुआ?
There are 2-3 forces that drive Pakistan's agenda on India. At a geostrategic level, it is water. Pakistan's a water deficient state. And therefore, it was with that in mind that Pandit Nehru, in the Indus Waters Treaty with Ayub Khan, went into an agreement with Pakistan, which is the most lopsided, one-sided water agreement that any upper riparian state has agreed in principle with another. This was authenticated by the World Bank also. So we have agreed to give Pakistan 80.52% of the waters of the Indus and us to keep 19.48%. When we do decide to use it, Pakistan goes into all sorts of efforts, whether at the International Court of Justice or try and make noises all over the world, or even use local groups to create agitations. One was pre-Burhan Wani, one was Burhan Wani's time.
Burhan Wani had become an icon within the valley. He was very much visible on the social media. So there was a sort of a connect that he developed with the people of Kashmir. So therefore what happened was that after his death, his name was known to a large number of people within the valley. It created a sort of a effect which resulted in a large number of people coming for his janaza. Now, because of extremely over thousands of people landing up at the janaza, it became a very big moment. And once that happened, thereafter there was a bit of violence which came in thereafter.
Pakistan's agenda has been the Pakistan army is driven by its own economic agenda, and its economic agenda is best served by showing India as an enemy. But getting back POK is to drawing the third big power into the game, because China has 22% of Jammu and Kashmir's territory. So for me, the UN resolutions are irrelevant, because the UN resolutions were between India and Pakistan. There's no mention of China in it. How do you resolve the Kashmir issue by the UN resolution? By getting China to continue to hold on to 22% of the territory.
Most of us who serve in Kashmir must realize that we really know very little about Kashmir. We go there, we remain tactical, we remain operational in our understanding of Kashmir. Because ours are mostly tenure-based stays in Kashmir. And we somehow never get to the people. We do not understand the history. We do not understand, most importantly, the psyche of the people. The valley floor, which is more populous, has been the one which has been more separatist, more Azadi oriented in its outlook. Could we make a dent on it from the Indian angle? I don't think we really understood it from a strategic angle. We have not understood it even till today. I think in the current times today, alienation and the idea of Azadi is very, very deep in the valley. This aspect of Wahhabiyat, I think that has not been understood by the Indian nation. It hasn't been understood by the Indian armed forces and not the strategic community of India. The manner in which Wahhabiyat was actually introduced into Kashmir, slowly in driblets, the manner in which a couple of thousand mosques changed hands in 10-15 years from the local Sufi Maulvis into the hands of the Wahhabis who came from central India. The one simple reason for it, sir, why this didn't happen was India and the Indian army and our strategic community and our understanding of fighting this war was army against terrorists. This is not about that kind of a war. You can kill terrorists forever. We have killed thousands of terrorists. Have we finished the problem? It's a hybrid war, and it has domains and domains from the whole spectrum of conflict. One of the very important aspects of that is religion, and the introduction of radicalism to create a clear path of linkages between the Kashmiri population, the Pakistani population, and going deep back into the Middle East.
जो एक प्रॉक्सी वार है फ्रॉम अक्रॉस द बॉर्डर, जो हम उसके अगेंस्ट फाइट कर रहे हैं, उसमें हमारे जितने भी शहीद हुए हैं हम आज उनको याद करते हैं, उनकी कुर्बानी को याद करते हैं, एंड वी पे होमेज टुडे टू देम एंड वी प्रे great gratitude. It is because of their sacrifices that we are spending sleepful nights without any sort of problems in the day-to-day life.
It is the Jammu and Kashmir police which has performed marvelously, done a very creditable job. And it is a partner of the Indian Army, complete partner. Jammu and Kashmir, keeping them together was the best decision of the government of India. Because if there is a solution to the heart and mind issue in Kashmir, it lies through the root of Jammu. There is no one who understands, no one in Delhi understands Kashmir the way the Jammu people understand it. And it is through the root of Jammu that we will actually win back Kashmir. You should have seen the state of Jammu of Kashmir post 8th of July when Burhan Wani was killed. The mobilization was entirely by the mobile internet. The entire valley went up in flames. Now everyone was on mobile communication. You could rally flash mobs in a matter of minutes. CRPF would have 10 Jawans standing somewhere and you would have 1,000 people against them in a matter of minutes. This game is about messaging and about information. I would say the internet can remain closed for 3 months more, as long as we are secure. There is in this whole game, in the terms of the background, a thing called an ecosystem. Networks and networks, money, drugs, media, right? Radicalism. You see the kind of networks which exist. They're scary. If a vehicle of the army just runs over someone, you see the manner in which a flash mob comes out. You will have 20,000 people there immediately. All kinds of people will be there. There are intelligence people, there are lawyers, every domain is addressed there. This ecosystem has been addressed for the first time in the last 2 years. This is what will finally bring down the capability of Pakistan.
हमारी बच्चे कोई सेफ नहीं, कितना माँ को रेप किया, कितना फेक एनकाउंटर किया, कितना कस्टोडियन किल किया, क्यों?
In the past, there have been some instances where people have blamed the army for some fake encounters, but largely in the last 10-15 years, there have been no fake encounters. The situation today is not the situation of the 90s.
If the situation keeps deteriorating in this manner, how do you play the hearts and minds game?
1842 was a very significant year when Vikram's ancestor Maharaja Gulab Singh, he signed a treaty with the Chinese Guofeng Emperor and the Dalai Lama. It was called the Treaty of Chushul. And that same year, 3,000 or 4,000 miles to the east, there was a gentleman called Major General Gough, and he led the Indian army into China and in the First Opium War. And they forced the same Chinese Guofeng Emperor to sign the Treaty of Nanking, which opened up the whole opium trade. The Chinese actually hated the Indians for growing the opium and selling it in China. And the Indian army, in one way or the other, from 1842 to 1939, was in China in one way or the other for 97 years. And they refer to this as the century of humiliation. And our august leadership that took charge of India in 1947 never ever realized the antipathy and hatred that the Chinese were taught in their schools, that Mao and Chou Enlai were taught by their teachers, that this century of humiliation has to be avenged. And what the Chinese feared was the Indian soldier led by the British officer. And that's why they decided to make an overture with Pakistan, because Pakistan had joined CENTO and CETO, and they feared American officers leading Pakistani troops against them. So they said, let's sort out the lesser of the two evils and eliminate the Pakistanis from the equation, and then we'll deal with the Indians. The Chinese are very clear that they need water, and they need waters of the Indian Ocean. And therefore, Pakistan is a throughway through which the oil and gas will flow right up into Xinjiang. And the waters of the Indus and the waters of the Shaksgam Valley and the waters, even in fact, people don't know that the Aksai Chin Lake, which is 8,000 square kilometers, and it's a very big lake, and it served as a substitute source of water when the main lake in Xinjiang became, radioactive as a result of the Chinese nuclear tests in Lopnor. So the Chinese have multifarious interests in Pakistan.
Chinese agenda was very clear, to keep India distracted. And if India is distracted, then India doesn't challenge Chinese hegemonistic designs in Asia or China's agenda. We may not sort of go on to the kind of totalitarian state approach that China employs for virtually everything. You see, China has done other things with Pakistan which has allowed it to continue to use Pakistan to its advantages. Gwadar, which has now been handed over to China for ownership and is one of the main ports that they have in the Arabian Sea, which is an extension of their route from Kashgar via POK and into lower Pakistan, whether it goes through Balochistan or takes another hook to avoid Baloch rebels and eventually comes to the Arabian Sea and then reaches out at part of his Belt and Road initiative. So long and short of it is that China sees a lot of merit in keeping Pakistan engaged. I mean, Pakistan is a vassal state of the Chinese now. If your territorial control, not just, I mean, forget POK, but not just that, but the Indus, Jhelum, Chenab, the northern river systems, if you lose territorial control of that, you lose a lot of potential water and energy. The fight over Siachen and the Siachen Glacier is about water.
Water was critical in 1947. Jinnah was supposed to have said that Kashmir, Pakistan ki Sharag hai, that is the juggler. What he was signaling was that all the sources of supply of water passed through India. And India could switch off the water at any time.
Water is our lifeblood. Pakistan, and particularly Punjab, and also Sindh, this is an agricultural country. 2/3 of our population lives on water. And I remember when I was a child, there was so much tension. India had stopped our waters at Hosseiniwala Headworks. I was a child, but I used to hear people talk about it at school, my father, family. There is not an inch of doubt that Pakistan will fight to live.
Pakistan is literally running out of water. In 1947, it was a water abundant country, about 5,600 cubic meters per capita per annum. Today, it has dropped to less than 900 cubic meters per capita per annum. And in about this decade, in a 10 years time from now, it will fall even below 500, which means absolute water scarcity and drought-like conditions.
The situation has changed since 1960. Pakistan has been given all the water it needed, even that 20% or so which India had right according to the treaty to use. India is not using it fully since then. But now Indian needs have changed, the technology has changed. So India has every right to use that part which is its entitlement in the already negotiated and agreed Indus Treaty.
Whether it be the Indus, which starts from Demchok, beyond, whether it is the Jhelum, which starts from Verinag, or anywhere, all the sources lie here. This worries Pakistan to a very, very great extent. And they realize that economically, their sustenance in the future cannot depend on international aid. It has to be self-sufficiency. And that can't be achieved unless the waters are in their control.
Pakistan is feeling a bit uncomfortable because they were given, they had taken it for granted that even if Indus water, a share for India, is assigned for India, India will not use it.
India now has the capacity to create so much of water, control over water inflow into Pakistan that you can flood us when we don't need it. You can deprive us of water when we want it. Now that means that if you bring it to that stage, any country will fight.
They were working well in the early 50s. They had already thought a game plan through for 70 years. that if we get Aksai Chin, we get the Shaksgam Valley, more than 252 glaciers there. It's the world's most heavily glaciated region. China is now telling Pakistan that you may have leased that territory to us. The agreement is quite interesting if you read the text. And in that agreement it says that nothing binds us to agreeing on the future of Shaksgam Valley. If for some reason that territory you are trying to negotiate back with India over an overall settlement over J&K. So Pakistan has allowed them a route through the Karakoram Pass, through the Karakoram, through Shaksgam Valley into POK, which is now sufficiently militarized. Somebody tells me with reasonable knowledge that the tunnels that are being made in the hill features on their side, far side of the tunnels, they are basically storage pads for missiles.
For the Chinese, the waters of the Indus are very important because they are setting up 5 dams between Gilgit and Islamabad. And each of these dams has a reservoir of about 60 kilometers length. Now, normally when you build a dam and you generate electricity, you release the water for irrigation. But here the water is being stored. Now you will say, why is the water being stored? The water is being stored because it is going to be used by the Chinese semiconductor industry. China's rivers are polluted and they are the world's factory. And they are now facing an embargo from the US on the export of semiconductors. And semiconductors power everything from your phone to aircraft. And these semiconductors require a lot of water. A 30 centimeter wafer of silicon requires 10,000 liters of water. So the Chinese are going to tap the water of the Indus for their electronic needs, and then they will release whatever is left for irrigation within Pakistan.
The most important, as I told you, the US Senate has also predicted the future war may not be over Kashmir, but it could be over water.
But today the problem is far more critical than it ever was in 1947 because Pakistan is literally running out of water.
Now we are allowed under the Indus Waters Treaty to tap 19.48% of the waters of the Jhelum, Chenab and Indus, the run of the river water, for our own uses to generate electricity. And we have had such a tough time in this Kishan Ganga project. The Pakistanis and the Chinese, if you look at the graph, you read my book, the way they've concerted this action to thwart us from completing that project. So for the Chinese, it's a very low-cost option. They have continued to fuel this insurgency. It cost them maybe $25 to $50 million to fund through Pakistan. We are paying them $75 billion a year as a trade deficit, and it's costing them $15 million to keep the insurgency alive. And we are spending another $3 to $5 billion a year in Kashmir to quell the insurgency and try and wean the population towards our side, but we've not been successful. So how are we going to be successful, and how is this violence going to be curtailed unless we face up to the reality of what the Chinese have been doing in the background and what they intend to continue to do, and develop a strategy to counter that?
This lack of strategy has historic roots, as the newly formed government of the Indian Dominion in 1947 had never strategized nor thought through the consequences of providing preferential treatment to the political elite of Jammu and Kashmir for an indefinite period of time. The government did this to buy continual support in the form of votes that their constituents would cast in favor of India if there were ever to be a plebiscite on the future of the state. The abrogation of Article 370 in August 2019 and the collapse of the BJP-PDP government in Jammu and Kashmir in June 2018 were a culmination of events that played out in the aftermath of Burhan Wani's death. Unknown to the somnolent government of India, there were a succession of international developments that caused the resurgence of violence in the state and have, perhaps only now, begun to feature in the government of India's political and strategic calculation. Foremost amongst them was a seemingly unrelated event that occurred in the Panama Canal in November 2016, just 3 months after the death of Burhan Wani. On the 21st of November 2016, the US Navy's $4.4 billion guided missile destroyer, the USS Zumwalt, suffered a catastrophic propulsion failure while traversing the Panama Canal. Just 2 days later, on the 23rd of November 2016, the British Royal Navy's $1.2 billion high-tech destroyer, the HMS Duncan, suffered a similar breakdown while on NATO maneuver. Thereafter, a second Zumwalt-class destroyer, the USS Michael Monsor, suffered a setback in December 2017, when a problem with the electrical system caused the destroyer to come back to the shipyard at Bath a day after leaving for sea trials. The reasons for all of these three failures have been identified as what are called Chinese chip destroyers, which are a type of microchip manufactured by the Chinese People's Liberation Army, the PLA, that were bought by the US Navy by the tens of thousands because of their low cost. And this consignment of cheap microchips was also shared with the British Navy. When forensic technicians were deployed to reverse engineer these faults on all of these three ships, they found that all the microchips received from a particular manufacturer had the same flaw. Further forensic investigations led to the blacklisting of Chinese tech company Huawei by the US Department of Defense. In August 2018, President Trump signed the National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year 2019, which bars all US federal agencies from, among other things, purchasing equipment or services from Chinese companies like Huawei, ZTE, and others. This action by the US government brought into risk China's annual import of over $200 billion worth of microchips from the US, Japan, and Taiwan. In order to bypass this restriction, the Chinese government's National Integrated Circuits Industry Investment Fund has embarked upon a massive billion-dollar microchip manufacturing program. However, the two critical raw materials to manufacture microchips are sand and fresh water. China has run out of unpolluted fresh water. The lakes, rivers, and glaciers in the Himalayan and Karakoram mountain ranges are the only source of water available to China. Adjacent to these mountain ranges is the Taklamakan Desert, which provides sand in abundance. Leading Chinese polysilicon and silicon wafer producer GCL Poly Energy Holdings is completing a 130,000 metric ton polysilicon plant outside Kashgar in Xinjiang. China's desperation for fresh water to power its microchip industry, which in itself is a vital resource for the entire swathe of Chinese manufacturing, necessitates China's absolute dominance over the waters of the Indus River. It is already investing $25 billion in building 5 dams and an equal number of water storage reservoirs attached to each of these dams, running to a total length of 225 kilometers in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. In order to prevent India from tapping into her legal share of nearly 20% of the run-of-the-river waters of the Indus, it makes sense for China to sustain and keep alive the continuing militancy and insurgency in Jammu and Kashmir, so that India cannot undertake any civil infrastructure work to tap into her share of water. For a small cost, China is able to dominate global manufacturing at India's expense. And to prevent India from exercising her rights over her share of the waters in Kashmir, China will keep the militancy alive through its Pakistani ally. And therefore, at no time in the foreseeable future would the guns ever go silent in the valley floor.